Good afternoon, gentlemen. Something that really never gets spoken about is I'm disabled. I have medical disabilities. I'm disabled permanently by the state, okay? I am a big advocate in Suffolk County. Speak with Senator Martinez. She knows me from the legislature in Suffolk County. And just on a quick note on the buses, I took every legislator on a bus ride with the transportation commissioner, because unlike Nassau County that has nice bus, in Suffolk County there are 3 different bus companies that run out in Suffolk. And just to give you one quick thing, when Mr. Ballone was talking about the BRT and on Nichols Road, when he cut 10, 12 buses 2 years ago, the bus that ran down Nichols Road was the bus that was cut. So I leave it at that, okay? My name is Paul Pressman, and I'm a private transportation advocate for people with disabilities. I personally am disabled with several medical conditions. I live just east of Babylon Railroad Station. Been disabled since 2005. Are you aware that there are at least 5 railroad stations that are not ADA compliant on the Babylon line? Okay? There are no elevators at Lindenhurst, at Copeg, at Amityville. So you've got to go into Nassau County to get on a train if you don't live by Babylon and you're disabled. That is ridiculous. When did the ADA go into effect that this thing had to happen? And now they're talking about in the 2020 capital project? Not for nothing, but I would assume you're all aware that every single municipality in Nassau and Suffolk County that has a railroad station pays money every single year out of our taxes to the MTA for station upgrade. Is an elevator not an upgrade? Does it not go up and down? What does it take to put in an elevator? And the brand new elevator they put in Wantagh, just so you know, it hasn't worked for 6 months. I think it may be working now. Amityville, I could have had a million different lawsuits against the MTA for trying to walk up those steps. I have congestive heart failure. Do you know how many steps there are? They finally got an escalator there. And by the way, because I don't have a car right now and I have to take public transportation, I just came off the train at Freeport. They have a sign up there. The elevator is out of service at Freeport. I go to Freeport for a simple reason. When I go home tonight, if I take the train home from Freeport, I will never have to pay a ticket. I get on that train every single day. And as long as you get on a train after Jamaica, you never have to pay because the conductors never come down. If there was a disabled person there that had a guide dog, would you like a picture of a video of a guide dog almost being shut by the doors closing because no conductor looked out the window to see if there was somebody getting on the train? I work as an advocate with the transportation director of SILO, which is the Suffolk Independent Living Organization, which is the resource center for people with disabilities. Right now, they have a pending lawsuit against the MTA that has not been resolved yet. It did not go to litigation because they want to resolve it. But these are the issues that are being had with people with disabilities. I spoke with Mr. Eng when he was out at Wyandanch. It was very nice of them to make a wonderful big station there and revitalize that whole area. Okay, that was perfect. It's very nice. Nobody uses it. They use the railroad. Nobody uses any of those stores. I've been taking buses in Suffolk County for 32 years. Okay? The buses, they have no money for the buses. Before Senator Croce left last year, he put in 3 bills in the Senate to try to get equal funding for Suffolk County. And speaking of the STOA funding, just so you know, Mr. Nice and Mr. Jack, they're getting $9 million in the increased STOA funding. Suffolk County is getting $2 million. And yet Suffolk County puts in $41 million of their own taxpayer money every year. And it's a big thing, and NYS gets $4 million. The difference is that NYS is the one bus service. Suffolk County takes their bus service and has outside bus companies bid on it, and then they operate the bus routes, but the county doesn't know what they're doing. Do you know you have the new MTA thing where you can see where the trains are coming and when they're coming? Well, they have the same thing in Suffolk County, but the county didn't make it. Suffolk Bus made it. That runs the whole paratransit system and 75% of the buses. And I understand this is an MTA meeting, but let me explain one quick thing as a disabled person. I have a disabled Metro card, but my Metro card, not every MTA Metro card can be used on a NYS bus. Okay? Because I can't afford to go and get the actual Metro card and get it refilled all the time. When I go to the subway, I get the $2.75 Metro card, okay? And it's good on all the Metro buses, but it's not good on the NYS bus. I called Nassau County. They originally told me that's an ADA violation. Now I've had conversations with everybody at NYS, everybody at MTA, and they're basically telling me that no, that's an issue. Well, I happen to have a person that I speak to on a weekly basis down at the FTA in Washington, D.C. When Suffolk County bought new buses, they bought smaller buses that the state gave them permission to buy from. They're not ADA compliant. I gave them 7 because I was asked to look at the buses before they were put on the road, and they're not ADA compliant. So, and they told me I was full of crap. And they said they didn't think that I had somebody that I could speak to in the FDA. I sent them a complaint down there. They're still now answering to the FDA about these buses, and they've already said they will never buy them again. So please understand, and like I said, Ms. Martinez and I have been good friends for a long time. Every legislator in Suffolk County knows who I am, okay? I've spoken to a lot of you on the phone the last couple of days. I am good friends with a lot of the assembly people as well. But ADA is very, very big, and things have to be done on the MTA regarding people with disabilities. And yet they still want to raise the rates. And yet they keep saying they're going to fix things. Well, this is 2019. I don't need a capital budget plan to get an elevator to be put into a railroad station. It's not millions of dollars to get that in there. So I don't understand, you know, all of this with these millions of dollars and everything else, and we can't get anything, you know, for people with disabilities.
Well, Mr. Pressman, thank you so much for your testimony. I'd like to turn it over to Senator Gorin.
Thank you, Mr. Pressman. I mean, all I can say is it's an absolute disgrace. And you mentioned just a few stations.
Yes,
there are
and
others.
if you'd like to speak at another time, you know.
Yeah, I would like to.
I would love
this
to.
has to be fixed.
Like I said,
this just can't stand.
Mr. Stern.
Let the senator finish. Go ahead.
That's fine. I'm just agreeing with you. This can't stand. This is an absolute disgrace. We have to be ADA compliant everywhere.
Assemblyman Stern, who also was on the legislature, I know he put something in on the assembly side to get money for Suffolk County. And he told me, when I saw him the other day, he says, you don't even have to ask me. He says, when you took me on that bus ride, he says, I never forgot. He says, and as soon as I got to Albany, that's what I did first thing. So I'm hoping the governor will give Suffolk County its fair share.
So thank you again, Mr. Pressman, for your testimony, for your leadership. One thing that I can tell you is that the issue regarding accessibility for individuals with disabilities is something that is a major priority for this conference, for the Democratic Conference. We have brought it up at each and every event that we have had with the leadership of the MTA. They are committed to moving the ball forward. They have committed to us both privately and publicly to do so. It takes resources.
No, I know that.
As we are,
And
as we are continuing to talk about ways to invest and make the system better, we all know, to Senator Gorin's point, and taking a line from Senator Gorin, it is an absolute disgrace that the MTA is almost 30 years behind the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. And there's only, at this point, 22% of the system-wide that, of the stops that are accessible. The MTA is working to move the ball forward again, as I mentioned.
Yes.
They're in the process of making 50 more stops accessible. They are committed to making accessibility a priority. We really, really appreciate your leadership. We need your leadership and others, riders, paratransit riders, individuals with disabilities. We need you to continue to work with us to get the message out about the real life impact. You mentioned having a congestive heart failure. We know that there was a tragedy in Manhattan at 7th and 53rd. Ms. Goodman died, but it may have had to do with pre-existing conditions and not the fall down the stairs. But what it did is it shined a light on the fact that accessibility is a major problem system-wide.
And it's worse on the subways.
And so we are absolutely bringing your message to the leadership of the MTA, and we're going to hold them accountable. And this is not a short-term fix. There's no silver bullet. This is going to be a grind in order to make sure, because you can't just make the system accessible overnight. So we have to prioritize, and we have to make sure that we get this right once again. So again, thank you very much for your leadership.
Well,
and your
I said,
courage to share your personal story. It's important.
and all I wanted to say was, I know it takes a lot of money, but it doesn't take a lot of money to put in one elevator at a station.
Right, so we're dealing with a 100-plus-year-old system, and again, we have to continue to drive the message forward and prioritize to make sure that we're following the law, especially as we're putting in billions of dollars into the system. So,
Yes.
So again, we appreciate you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Michno. I'm a rider of the Long Island Railroad. And first of all, I just want to thank those who remain that stayed. It's a shame that the Long Island Railroad management couldn't stay the whole time. First of all, I want to give my thanks and appreciation to all the Long Island Railroad employees who worked hard to restore service after Tuesday's tragedy in Westbury. It is one more reason why the main line modernization is so important, so these dangerous crossings are eliminated. However, nobody brought up the fact, and that I wasn't happy with, the night this happened, there was no alternative transportation being provided. People were stranded trying to get home. I don't get it. The MTA has no problem raising our fares, yet can't be bothered to send some of the thousands of buses it owns in New York City to help us out when there's a service problem on the Long Island Railroad. I think this is outrageous and really shows the lack of respect the MTA has for Long Island. In general, this comes out when the committee meetings take place, as more time is often devoted to Metro-North, a railroad that has much fewer problems than the Long Island Railroad. And then there's the Long Island Railroad itself, which reflects the culture at the MTA, where there's favoritism and corruption. Anthony Simon, I don't know if he's still here, but he was spot on about some of the management. No, I don't blame Philip Ang at all. I really don't. I think he's doing a great job, but the problem is the people around him, people like Elisa Pica, there's so much corruption, there's so many problems, there's so much excessive management, and they're forgetting about the riders. For instance, these renovations that have taken place on the Long Island Railroad, they like to pat themselves on the back constantly about. There are stations that are being forgotten. Merrick, Belmore get a renovation. Those stations were in fairly good shape. Yet Freeport is falling apart, and there's no renovation for Freeport. And for Deer Park, there's no canopies. There's still a tiny waiting room and one restroom. That's not enough. And then there's the service. The main line in particular deals with constant service issues such as signal problems, broken rails, switch problems, not to mention our trains are often the most overcrowded. The maintenance is terrible. I've been brought up to the attention about broken railroad ties that I think are still in Mineola right now. They still haven't been fixed. There's graffiti along the tracks. There's trash. And I was really hoping when we had a new president, Phil Lane, come in, that things were going to improve. There have been some improvements. But unfortunately, some of the same problems still remain, and that's because the management around him, particularly Executive Vice President Elisa Pica, they've been appointed by the previous president. They're still doing things the old way. We need to have, it's like trying to have a new captain of a ship, but he's being told by his staff on the bridge to just keep doing things the same way. And we don't get enough service. We don't have enough fair, reliable service. And I have to say, of all the speakers here, Anthony Simon really spoke very well about the corruption. It really is absolutely terrible what goes on. Depending on where you live, it will depend on how you're treated by the railroad. A ridership has nothing to do with it. Deer Park gets a tiny little station, while Wantagh has this beautiful new station, waiting room. Everybody needs to be treated equally. That's not happening. And as far as the buses go, I'm glad the speakers did bring up the buses. Wasn't even going to mention that, but it's important because the bus system's in a crisis on Long Island. There have been cuts. People need to get around. People shouldn't be left stranded. Where more people are driving because the transportation is not reliable, it's bad for the environment. More cars on the road, more pollution, more problems. It's not good for the environment. I'm somebody who talks a lot about the pine barrens on Long Island and how we need to preserve them. And, all this pollution is bad for our air. It's hurting the pine barrens. But the corruption at the Long Island Railroad, Phil Lang is, I feel, being made the scapegoat. It's not him. It's the people around him, Elisa Pica in particular. She's always there watching over his shoulder, making sure things are still done the same way that they've always been done. They have to change. They have to change. There needs to be change at the Long Island Railroad, and there needs to really be a clean house as far as the management goes. The workers are out there working hard. They don't get the credit they deserve. They are the ones who have faced the brunt of the riders when they complain. The riders are often taken out on the workers. It's not fair to them. It's the management. People need to push for changes in the management at the Long Island Railroad and at the MTA in particular, because right now there's too much favoritism going on towards certain parts of the railroad, on the South Shore in particular, on the Babylon branch, and Metro North. Metro North, why do they get more time in committee? Why do they get like a half an hour more time when there's a committee meeting? They run over their time limit, and Long Island Railroad gets cut short. That's not right. Nobody's brought that up, and the lack of alternative transportation. Nobody should be left stranded with the prices people on Long Island pay to get around. There should be a guaranteed ride for people when the trains don't work. They should get those buses out here. That's all I have to say. I'm not going to go over my time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Just for the record, can you please state your name again?
Yes, it's John, John, Michno, Michno.
Okay, thank you,
And I live in Mineola.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, thank you.
Michno. Everyone, thank you for your testimony.